Model 500 back then.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Mark. Go ahead.
No worries.
I forgot to turn on the record. I got the recording going now.
Yeah. So anyway, so I hired in at Hughes and I worked there for 6 weeks. And at the same time, a guy named Corky Lancaster hired me he interviewed me and offered me a job at Douglas. So when he made an offer that was doubling my salary, it took me about a half a second to make the decision to go to Douglas.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. So prior to Douglas, you were working and that was at Rockwell?
I worked at Hughes Helicopters for 6 weeks.
Sorry, Hughes. Yes.
No worries. Yeah. And like I say, I hired in at Hughes while I was still in the Navy. I was on what they call terminal leave. Was you had so much leave or vacation built up, and then you would take that, and you didn't have to go back to the base. You literally your date came up, and you were gone.
That's great. That's super. So when you got hired into McDonnell Douglas, that was probably what, about 78, 79, something like that?
October of 78.
Okay, 78. So what did you come in at? I mean, what were you doing initially?
I was a manufacturing coordinator.
Okay.
And what that meant was I was kind of a go-between assembly. So I was in building 12, which was at the time DC-10 major subs. And so they had a position where we had these war boards. I mean, this is all terminology that'll be Greek, but we had these places where we would get together and talk about what's holding up production. And this is in building 12. So my job was to coordinate with all the different support agencies and work with them to eliminate roadblocks in production.
Right. Yeah, what a cool job. I mean, that's a great position because you get to know everybody, right?
There you go.
Everybody and what all the different holdups are, what the obstacles are, and so forth.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really
and then six months later, they made me a manager on the DC-10 line. So I was the youngest manager at Douglas. I think I was 22 years old. Wow. And I had the forward fuselage in building 12. So I was the manager there, or a manager there.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah. I remember, I think they were between 78 and 79, they were finishing up the A4 assemblies, weren't they?
They did. So the A4, it was the last ones that went through were in December of 79, I believe. Okay. And in building 12, they had a small little line, and I'm not sure where the final assembly was, but yeah, they had the forward fuse they would send over to wherever they had the final assembly. And the last ones were actually two-seater trainers, the TA4Js.
Right. Since I did restart I kicked on the recorder, I'll just reiterate. I'm Tim Engel, and this is Mark Spencer. Mark just is wrapping up a 45-year career with McDonnell Douglas and Boeing. And we're talking to him about operations and manufacturing, supply chain, and all of his experience. So we kind of got the why. We talked a little bit about preparing for the career. And then we also talked a little bit how you got the job. And let's see, we talked about, so you started out as a manager. Well, I mean, you manufacturing coordinator, and then you got into a manager. So do you want to take it from there? And I know you don't want to talk about all the details, but can you give us an overview of your career a little bit?
Okay. Do you want just the Douglas Boeing, or do you want my career?
You can share whatever you want to share.
No, it's just funny because I know there's going to be a lot of people, in their college years and early career, looking at the video. So very briefly, I started McDonald's hamburgers, like millions of other kids probably. And then I went in the Navy for 4 years as structural mechanic. And then we talked about the Hughes helicopters and then hiring into Douglas. So at Douglas, I actually hired in salaried, and they put me in this building that actually in World War II, they had B-17s going down the lines. So that was building 12, and we did major sub-assemblies for the DC-10. They would take these sub-assemblies, roll them across Lakewood Boulevard, and then assemble them to the wings and complete the airplane. So what I did was I had all different disciplines. Ended up being a branch manager there, so the entire department, but all the different disciplines. So you had the people putting in insulation blankets, the structures, the electrical, mechanical systems, environmental, pretty much everything we could stuff into the airplane, we did before it went across the street. So we had the hourly workers building the aircraft. And so we had that environment that great union stewards we had there in building 12. And I think really what really sparked me to get into the management at such a young age was just that I liked helping people. So, well, we worked together and we built airplanes, and I thought they were darn good airplanes. And, I was very proud of doing this and, watching airplanes fly off after we built them. So very proud to do that kind of work.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things that I always thought about my career. I'd go out there on the shop floor and I'd see an airplane, and I was like, there are people that they sell insurance, or there's all these different jobs, deliver things or whatever. There's all these jobs in the world, and we're blessed to be able to build aircraft. I think we're the #1 exporter for the country. Boeing.
I believe so.
Yeah.
In the higher tech industries. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So you got to be a branch manager, which more recently they call that a senior manager,
Yeah.
which is what I was, and that's a pretty good deal. You're kind of getting into middle management, and it's usually you get a pretty good raise with that and everything. But so do you attribute anything to you being able to get to that level? I mean, was it just work ethic? Was it your attitude, your character? Was it showing up every day? I mean, what do you think made a difference?
Yes.
All of that.
It was all of those. People look at you, and it was really bizarre. You advanced and kept your job, and got promoted based on performance. How you performed. Of course, old school. It was cost and rate. Were you meeting budget and putting out the aircraft?
Yes.
But really, it does have to do with all those traits that you mentioned. It's people notice. It's not all politics. If you're in there and you're working hard and being a team player, and taking a global view of the whole process, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the tooling, just looking at everything, the big picture, and working as a teammate. I think that's the people notice, and that's what gets the job done.
Right. So you've talked about kind of the beginnings and stuff, and getting into middle management. I know you've got quite an education. I should have said this is Dr. Mark Spencer when I introduced you, because you have a doctorate degree. I know we had a little bit of a relationship in your infancy stage, where I was teaching operations management, and you took one class with me, but I did not know until more recently that you had gone on and gotten a doctorate. So can you tell us a little bit about your education and why you've been a lifetime learner and that kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah. It's important. And if nothing else, I did put some notes down based on the questions you asked me. But the thing is, things are always changing. The paradigm is always changing. So you have to adapt. I mean, of the one quality that can get you far in your career is being adaptable to all these different changing things.
Yes.
Okay, so when I hired in, it was a simpler time. I got hired into as a manager without having any kind of a college degree. And I was successful, and I made branch manager without or senior manager without a degree. Well, I talked to my directors and stuff, and they said, hey, it'd probably be a pretty good idea if you got a degree. So I went to Long Beach City College, and I got an AA degree, or AAS degree in industrial technology. And then I took 20 years off. A lot of things happened in 20 years.
Yes.
And so then Mr. Tim Engel, you were working, as an instructor there at Cal State Long Beach. And I took that certificate program, and really the whole thing for me was just to dip my feet in the current college environment to see if I could do it or not. And so that's how I did get into your certificate program. And I did really well there, and also at Long Beach City College. And so I decided after the certificate program, hey, it'd be pretty cool to get my bachelor's. So I went and did that, business management. And because what was happening was the paradigm was changing. They were expecting managers and technical people to have their degrees. So I changed by going back to school, and I got my bachelor's, and I just kept on going. I got my MBA, and then I took a year off, and I says, you know what? My sister says she's going to go back to school and get her doctorate. And I says, well, if you're doing it, I guess I'm going to do it too, right? I mean, it literally was that informal.
Yes.
And yeah, literally, it was just almost a joke. But I wanted to do it for myself. And so I spent 7.5 years and had a humongous study, and the dissertation was 237 pages.
Wow.
Interviewed 20 people and went through that pain. And I feel proud. It's an achievement to get your doctorate. My only advice being is I kind of went backwards. I would encourage the college people today, get your degrees first. That way you can leverage it. When I got my doctorate, people were saying, well, what are you going to do with it? I got it in 2018, so I'm kind of at the tail end of my career. But I would encourage college students to, get their degree and keep on going. The AS used to be, the associates used to be big. Then it wasn't good enough. You had to get your BS. Then that wasn't good enough. I think when the college folks do get in the workforce, they're going to find that they do need an advanced degree, at least a bachelor's, if not more. So my advice is to go and get it done as quickly as you can, and you can leverage it.
That's super. I remember some advice a guy gave me. He was going for an advanced degree, and he said, it's a good idea to prepare for the future. If you get an advanced degree, in a lot of cases, it opens other doors for you. Sometimes you have no idea what they're going to be, but
Yeah.
it might be that you choose to go and teach part-time or something like that, and like you said, the paradigm shifts, and companies are expecting an advanced degree, so it can open doors for you.
Yes. And so, I mean, I don't know if we're going to cover these questions, but just kind of going back, the sooner you pick your career or a field that you're passionate about, then, you can actually get your degrees and have a good focused path without wasting time. So if my advice would be just find something you're passionate about. I mean, your career can change. I think, Tim, we're the exception. We were there for so long in the same career. We both love the career. But
Yes.
if they can, get a focused path for their education, and part of that is to talk to people in the industry that they're interested in. Talk to them, because they'll say, well, okay, how do you like your job or whatever? But they're saying, well, how did you get qualified? What did you need? And the only reason I say that is because my path is so convoluted, and it could have been a lot more efficient. Ended up great. But if someone at the beginning of their career can go in there and be focused, if they can find a field they really love, it makes the job a lot easier.
Yeah.
When you have to work so long.
I think the other thing about you, Mark, is, and a little bit me too, but we stayed busy. I completed my education while I was working as well, and Boeing helped pay for it. You stayed busy, and that,
Yeah.
I think people recognize that. In fact, I know they do, because in your example, because yesterday I talked to Gary Jordan, who used to work for him, and he said at one point, when he heard you were going for your doctorate, he really encouraged you to do that.
Well, what people don't, well, most people don't know is, okay, yes, I did it while I was working. And for me at my age, um, my mind works best in the morning. So I was literally getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning while on assignment in Victorville doing flight testing. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was on the computer doing my dissertation and working with Gary. He encouraged me. And, but, it took a lot of fortitude, and there was times I wanted to quit, but eventually got done with support from my manager and my coworkers, and of course the company. They paid for it. So no, it was worth it, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you've thought about what you're going to do after you do retire, what your plan is, but I mean, you could certainly teach part-time if you wanted to. You could teach full-time. You could write books. I mean, you name it. You could do lots of different things with that education.
Well, it's the education and the experience. And I
Yeah.
actually had, yeah, I want to spend more time with family and retirement stuff, but the idea of teaching people or passing on some tacit knowledge really appeals to me. I think this is a good start, just to do these interviews and hopefully spark something in somebody. But what I plan on doing in the short term is going to March Air Force Base wants me to work as a docent in their museum. I talked to them.
Nice.
Yes. So even though I'm Navy, and there's just a handful of Navy aircraft, I love all aircraft. And so they talked to me. I talked to the person who runs the museum, and they're just chomping at the bit to get me down there to help out.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, volunteer work. So
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I don't know if I told you my dad was Navy. He was on a destroyer in World War II. Yeah.
so yeah, I was on 3 different carriers, in the Navy, aircraft carriers,
Right.
stationed at Miramar, which is where Top Gun was.
Wow.
And so, but
That's
I didn't
cool.
see Tom Cruise.
No Tom
but
Cruise.
but sure was exciting, and honestly, so I had a choice, after high school. I went to Mater Dei in Santa Ana, pretty well-known school. But as a young kid, I started school early. I was not interested in continuing on my school at that point. I was just too immature. So for me, the Navy was a good start because I knew I had to learn something. In those days, we all knew that you had to learn something to get a career because eventually you'd have a family. I mean, it just seemed pretty straightforward.
Yes,
So I wasn't ready emotionally for school, but I knew I had to learn something, and that's why I went in the service.
that's super. That's fantastic. Let's see. So we haven't really talked. We got into the fact that you were a senior manager, but we didn't kind of go beyond that.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about some highlights of your career, some of the programs and some of the different challenges or highlights or achievements that you had during your?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. People think 45 years and you're in one spot doing the same job, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. I did write a couple things down. So as far as achievements, probably one of the biggest things was I was never laid off. So Tim, as you know, a lot of aerospace left California. We were at 52,000 people in Long Beach, and we went to about 800. So going from those numbers, I dodged a lot of bullets. So I got to do a lot of different jobs. So quickly, just what I did at Douglas Boeing, 13 years in management, up to a business unit manager actually after TQMS. And that was in parts fabrication, major subassemblies, quality assurance for MD-11, and on military and commercial products. So at that time, I worked both defense and the commercial side. Then I have 10 years as a FAA designee. So what that means is, the FAA gives people at the company authorization to do inspections on behalf of the administrator. So 10 years of doing everything from inspecting a burn sample for a piece of carpet to hanging certificates of airworthiness on aircraft, and experimentals and things like that. So literally womb to tomb. That is really, for me, is one of my accomplishments there. Them giving
That's quite an
me,
achievement.
yeah, they having the confidence in me. And then 22 years in engineering. So I was in manufacturing engineering, industrial engineering, quality engineering, maintenance programs engineering. So all those without an engineering degree. So,
Pretty darn good.
but as far as any other achievements, I took advantage. We talked about the education. So our employer offered to pay for college, and I took advantage of that. So doing all the different degrees. I had a really fun job, and it was a part-time job. It was 16 and a half years as a seminar host and technical focal for airlines. So, we talk about manufacturing or in production and stuff, but these aircraft leave or products leave, and we still have to support them. So for 16 years, we had 3 seminars a year, and then we had participants from all around the world. And to me, that was just so exciting. The diversity, all the people there had the love of aviation, but they were from every region of the world. And I posted something the other day, a picture where we had 72 participants from airlines around the world. And I got to host the seminar and do the technical focal and presentations and stuff. So that to me, it's an accomplishment. And it was just being able to work with all different people from around the world. It's just amazing. It was like United Nations, and they had the common love for aviation, and it was just wonderful. And so that's about it for as far as the big achievements that I had. You may not think about it, but an achievement or accomplishment or just something great about our jobs is just meeting people. And getting to work with a lot of people from diverse backgrounds. But that's what you remember in the end of the day. You don't want to focus so much on your career that you take advantage of people or bypass the human factor. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I love, yeah, Tim, I'm sorry, but I love people, and I did love, and it was a family type environment for me where I took care of as a manager, I always took care of my people. And then, when I was in a non-management position, just taking care of the company and making sure things got done the right way.
Right, right. I think that's so true. I feel the same way. It was fascinating, the people that meet over the years. And there's such a diverse group, like you said. I mean, working in Long Beach was like the United Nations. I mean, there was white, black, Hispanic, Asian, you name it, right?
Yes.
And from all over the world. And the other day I was at Costco over there in Cyprus, and with my girlfriend, and we were checking out. And I looked behind us in line. There's this guy, and I remember his first name. I couldn't remember his last name, but he used to be senior manager or director in tooling. His name was Bill, but I couldn't remember his last name. And I go, Bill. I go, Bill, right? He looked at me. He goes, yeah. How did you know? And I go, and he goes, I've been retired for 26 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, I was so impressed over my career, just like you were, with the people, the diversity, the variety, the talent that we dealt with. Everything from like yourself, doctorates, all the way down to no education, to people with tons and tons of experience. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. It was a journey, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So here we are, we're talking to the people at the beginning of their careers, and hopefully this will help them, point them in the right direction. And the biggest thing is just never to give up, and just keep on pushing forward and changing and adapting. That's the big.
I was going to say too, and like you said, we're at the end of our careers, Gary, and myself, you. but I look forward to also talking to some earlier career people. You know, there in Long Beach, even though they recently hired in and the jobs moved to San Antonio, they were hiring youngster, I would say early career people, you know,
Yes.
people in their 20s, which is great, you know, it's wonderful. And get to know some of those folks and meet them and find out about them. And they were excited about aviation and being at what we would maybe consider an A company, you know, like a top, one of the top companies in the country, you know, and that's exciting too. And they have their whole career to look forward to. So yeah,
I would
hopefully they
just,
have good long career like we did.
yeah, I would just tell them to, definitely, listen to the people around you and the experienced people. I'll just do one quick example. In those DC-10 days, we had, very experienced liaison engineers, and then we would have guys that just got hired in. And I remember working, there was a FERSER, if you remember that, so a failure, and rejection report. So there was a problem on the airplane, a double hole or something.
Mhm.
And so there was two ways of going about it. So the more experienced people would ask the mechanic, like the person that's been hands-on, they would ask the mechanic, what do you think? What would you do? And here's these liaison guys, and they're highly educated, but they would actually talk to the mechanic because they have that experience. And then we had the guys that just hired in. I don't know if you remember Warren Wessel. I don't know if I
Yes, I
should
do.
say
I do.
it. Okay, so when Warren went into liaison engineer, we had he got us a fix that was multiple doublers and all kinds of stuff, and it ended up getting changed to a couple of bushings. Sorry for being technical, but it literally was just a simple thing of putting a couple of bushings in, and with the younger guy who was relying on his education and not experience, just made this super complicated fix that was never used. So I would say just, listen to those around you with experience. You don't always have to agree, but keep the mind open and listen to what, the more experienced people have to say.
Yeah, that's probably good advice. To talk, and you can talk to multiple people. You know, you can get
Yes.
an opinion from one guy and then talk to another girl and get an opinion there and put something a good plan together. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Warren Wessels, I remember him. He was, I think he was the liaison manager or something.
I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, but on the flip side, okay, on the flip side, you know, a lot of new people come in with great ideas. Some of the older folks are more experienced people. They're used to doing things a certain way, and someone comes in with a fresh set of eyes, and they can come in and have some just wonderful, outstanding ideas. So I would say, don't just climb up and say nothing. I would definitely, make their voices heard, and a fresh set of eyes is worth a lot.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Fresh set of eyes. And so, yes, just a fresh set of eyes, a second set of eyes. You know, for a while when we were having problems with the quality escapes from one department to the other, for a while we were doing double shakes. We'd have two mechanical and two electrical inspectors, and it was costly and time consuming, but it was necessary because we were the program was not very mature yet on the C-17,
Okay.
and so stuff was turning. There was work turning from the previous department, you know, out of position work, or what Calhoun was talking about, traveled work, you know, that kind of thing. I think we're all familiar with that.
Very familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah. So so um, so Mark, we're getting down toward the time.
Uh-huh.
Are there any final recommendations you would have for uh, college students and or early career people? Any advice you'd like to give to them? Any nuggets of wisdom?
Well, we've touched, throughout the conversation, we've talked a lot of different things. And again, the advice is to, just to find a field you're interested in, you know, something you're passionate about rather than just interested. I wouldn't just chase the dollar. I would chase something that you're passionate about.
Right.
and stay focused. The quicker you can, identify the path by talking to people in the industry. I would say, make it easy on yourself by, identifying that path and following the path rather than going off in all different directions like me, you know. I would say, continue your education throughout your career. So education isn't just college. There's formal and informal ways of getting education. Some of that might be joining a professional association, attending meetings and things like that, and and getting that network going. But I would say, when I came up with a list of all these different things, I would say, attitude has a lot to do with your success in life, but especially at work. So I would say, be positive and realistic. You don't want to just, shake your head and agree with everything, but at the same time, you want to be positive and work for that common goal. Positive and realistic. And then the whole thing about being adaptable. There's one reason we survived and thousands of other people didn't survive, is because we could adapt with the changing paradigm. So I would say, have that attitude. People do notice. They notice the positive and they notice the negative side. So attitude is a really big deal. I'm a strong proponent of talking to people, whether it's on Zoom or phone, rather than just emailing, because a lot of stuff can get lost in translation. So if there's an opportunity to talk face to face, that's the best, in my opinion. Take that opportunity to talk face to face. So,
yeah, that's good advice. The technology's changed and we've been adapted to that. We're doing it right now. We're on a Zoom meeting, but in the old days, we used to have lots of face-to-face meetings. We go to a conference room, we get together, we'd look each other in the eye. Maybe we'd sweat a little bit because we were of a certain leader or their style, or there were leaders in the past that were pretty ferocious, at least in our view. But they all meant well. Their heart was in the right place, right?
Yes, but it's all communication, and there's a lot more to communication than what's written on a screen, on a cell phone or a computer screen. A lot can be left to interpretation and misinterpretation. So if there's an opportunity, the phone or Zoom or face to face, that's the way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Great advice, Mark. Mark, I can't thank you enough for your time and being part of this. We got the ball rolling now. I think you're like the fourth or fifth person. So really appreciate.
Oh, you waited that long?
Well,
just kidding.
You committed early, though. That was great. It's just getting you on the schedule. And I did have the pleasure of meeting the guy who gave the grant to Chapman University last night, Manu Shaw. Great guy. Those guys started with a few $100. They were here from India, and they started the company back in the late 70s. And now they're doing over $3 billion in business a year.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty amazing. So, and he said, "Hey, I want to make a difference. I could give you $1 million, you put it on the building, and we call it a day." But he said, "Hey, I want to make a difference in the college students' lives." He wanted to be to give them a stimulus, to give them something to think about, and that's what we're doing. That's what you're doing, Mark, and that's really wonderful. Appreciate you doing that.
Of course, it's been my pleasure, Tim, honestly.
Yeah. So just wrapping this up, I'll be sending you a copy of the video, and sure appreciate everything you did, Mark. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again in the near future.
That sounds great, Tim. I really appreciate you. Everything you did, you sparked me to go back to school.
That's good. I'm glad.
Okay. All right, guys.
Take care, man. We'll
talk to you, Tim.
soon. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care.